Welcome to the Daily Commercial Forum. I'm your host, Sandy Moore. Seniors represent the fastest growing segment of Lake County's population. Many enjoy the third stage of their lives, staying very active and social. Unfortunately, though, some seniors become victims of abuse. Today, we are talking about how to detect elder abuse and what can be done about it. Our guests are Sherry Peterson, the Operations Management Consultant for the Department of Children and Families Central Region Adult Protective Services Program, Allison Thal, the Health and Human Services Manager of Lake County Department of Community Services, and Kathy Haviland, Program Administrator of Tri-County Senior Outreach Services. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's start by talking about really the definition of abuse. What is abuse? I know we're going to specifically talk about elder abuse, but what is abuse? Sherry?
Well, according to the Florida statute, it's the willful or threatened act by a relative, caregiver, or household member which causes or is likely to cause harm, injury, or impairment to a person's physical, mental, or emotional well-being.
So today, in talking about elder abuse, what are the different types of elder abuse? Physical, obviously. Mm-hmm. Are there other types?
Well, there's financial, there's emotional abuse, usually I say it with neglect, exploitation, emotional and financial.
Sherry, can you share with us maybe some of the statistics for our area, for the counties, maybe even surrounding us? Is elder abuse on the rise, or is it on the decline? Is it a real threat in this area? I mean, is it a problem that we have?
Well, elder abuse is a threat everywhere. What our statistics show, it doesn't show the abuse if it's happening, it shows the reports that are being called into our hotline.
Okay.
So the data that I can offer you is the rate of the cases that are coming in being called to our 1-800-ABUSE hotline. So that being said, if you compare data from 2010 to 2013, specifically for Lake County, in May of 2011, Lake County had 867 cases called into our hotline. In May of 2012, we had 858 cases called into the hotline regarding cases in Lake County. And as of May 2013, the number did decline to 772.
Now, just because they're called in, cases that are called into the hotline, does that actually mean that there was abuse?
No. Anybody can call a case into the hotline, and what happens is they call the 1-800 number, or they may do a web report or fax in the report. They speak to our counselors, and they give them some information about the victim, that's what they're called, some demographic information, and the situation that they feel rises to abuse, neglect, exploitation. What happens then is the case then comes down into the hotline, and we send an investigator out to see if there is any veracity to the report. We interview the victim. We interview on a second party case of neglect. We interview the alleged perpetrators. We interview collateral contacts. So every report that comes into the hotline, we don't know if there's any truthfulness to it until the investigation is fully completed.
Okay, so that number could be misleading. It could
Correct.
be. And I want to talk a little bit later on a little bit more about reporting abuse. But before that, I want to talk about what are some of the signs of abuse. How, if you have maybe a parent that's in a home, or even parents that are in home, what are some of the signs for abuse that we're looking for? Allison, do you?
Well, one thing I just wanted to point out is an interesting fact in Lake County is we have 95,000 residents in Lake County who are 60 years and older.
Wow.
And with a population of roughly 300,000 people, 95,000 60-plus-year-olds it's almost a third of our population. Right. Coupled with that is the fact that 18,000 of these 95,000 individuals live alone. So we have a lot of seniors who are living alone. Some of them may live in communities, but many of them we find live in
regular subdivisions.
In regular subdivisions, or they live out in Pine Lakes, or they live up off of 42, and they live in rather rural areas.
Secluded, a little bit more secluded.
A little more secluded. So what we've also found is that self-neglect is a key part of the abuse that we see. Primarily because these folks they're just not able to care for themselves the way they used to be able to, be it feeding themselves, cleanliness, hygiene, keeping their houses safe. and they're living in even dangerous living conditions.
Now, do you think that a lot of that is because people don't realize, I mean, that they don't have family around that are identifying that this is an issue?
Yes, I think there's a lot of that.
And they're vulnerable. They're elder and they're vulnerable to everybody. You know.
And I'm thinking we could probably do a whole show just on that, on the, you know, how we can help people in that situation as well. What are some of the signs for people that, you know, what are some of the signs for people that are being...
For purposes of DCF, the reports that we see come into the hotline for physical abuse, it's bruising, it's decubitus for neglect, weight loss. Does somebody have their glasses broken? If they have their glasses broken, why were your glasses broken? If you have somebody in the home and they're coming to you and they have a lot of bruising, and then you go and you ask them what's wrong, and then they say, well, I just fell. Okay, well, how many falls did you have? Those types of physical outward things are indicative to us of signs of abuse, but sometimes they're just demeanor. If you once have a person that's very extroverted and all of a sudden now they're very withdrawn and they're not talking and they haven't spoken to their family for a while, why are they not doing that? Those to me are all indicators that something's happened with them, either physically, mentally, that to me is a trigger that there's something going on there. So not only is it outward signs, but I think for me, I also look for the inward signs as well. Change of behavior for me is huge.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, I have parents that are getting older in age, and one of the things, I mean, you know, they've dealt with sicknesses, they've had weight loss. My mom falls, you know, has had a lot of falls, and so I would say that would be very hard to detect just based on those types of things, because it's kind of natural when you get older to have certain ailments that cause those other things. So the change in your demeanor may be...
For me, it's change of behavior. I would always go and I would investigate a case and to see how did that victim interact if she saw the perp in her line vision, or if I mentioned the alleged perpetrator's name, did her eyes divert? Did her attention divert? Did she change the subject and just tell me, it's fine, everything's fine? Those were triggers for me that there was something else there.
They're scared. They're scared.
Now, when we're talking about this, you know, I guess painting the picture of people that are in their own homes that maybe have a caregiver that's coming to their home, people that are in nursing homes, you know, all sorts of different scenarios that you're having to deal with. Is that accurate?
Yes. I know DCF investigates in-home cases. We also go to group homes. We go to assisted living, skilled nursing facilities, hospitals, you name it. As long as there is a vulnerable adult located at that location, we will go there.
But all employees have to be level 2 background checked. That's a federal canvassing to make sure that the caregivers are cleared through, I don't know how you identify level 2, you know, officially, but as an administrator, that was mandate. And then,
And that's if you're in a facility.
Or in-home care, private duty, home health, Medicare, home health
But if
agencies.
you have a family member that's taking care of another family member, or you just...
Right.
There's no way to track it.
You can't, yeah, that would be. What other types of, what are some signs of abuse? And I know we talked about other types of abuse. We talked about financial abuse. What are some signs that maybe someone's being abused in that way? Kathy?
I know bank tellers are trained now. There's formal programs for them to identify, you know, if this elder man has been a customer for 20 years and all of a sudden now he has a caregiver and they visit the bank 3 times a week, you know, removing money, and they're mandated to report that also to the victim's advocate, the police department, et cetera.
Are there other signs that people can look out for? Like even a family. I know a lot of times people come, you know, here, they're retiring here, they want to stay here, but their family lives up north, so they're away from their family, and so they're relying on other caregivers. Are there things that they can be looking for that would help to identify stuff, things like that?
We've received calls from physicians where a couple has gone to a doctor's appointment and a doctor's office has called our office to share with us just either a physical condition or the fact that they were unclean or their clothes were soiled, and were concerned that there was something amiss going on within the home. And we have worked with physician offices to help identify and report. And as I mentioned earlier, so many of these cases that are self-neglect cases are not, there's no guilty party.
Right.
It's merely the fact that these individuals really need some extra help, be it in-home care, be it visitation from home health agencies, because everybody wants to stay in their own home. I understand that. And it's far less expensive.
Well, and I was just going to say, what if you can't afford to go out of your home? I mean, that would be my thought.
And that's very real. And I think you
Yeah,
see that a
well,
lot.
first thing I think of as a true advocate for the elder person is to be the protector. Make sure you bring in the correct resources, find the funding, help them apply, help them navigate through the complicated healthcare industry, and have them okay and the family okay with their choices. This program that I've developed is there to support them 24 hours, 7 days a week, and they have now a coach to hold their hand.
And you started to kind of talk about how to report it, but what if you do suspect that there's some abuse, whether it be that it's an abuse of your family member, or maybe it's a neighbor, or maybe it's some other, you see something happening. What do you do to report this abuse? I mean, are we obligated to report it if we think that something's happening? What do we do?
Well, obviously, right off the bat, if you think that something's immediately happening, my recommendation is going to be for them to call 911. That's always my first thing, is to call 911. This way, there could be a first responder on the scene if it's an immediate need. We have the 1-800 abuse number that people can call up to generate hotline reports. It can be done by telephone, it can be done on the web, it can be done by fax. And the reports will either come into us with a 24-hour response time or a 3-hour response time if it's an immediate. And we do send our investigators out there to go and see the client. There are mandatory reporters in Florida, your law enforcement, medical personnel, social workers, teachers. My own personal feeling is everybody should have a civic obligation. If you see some type of abuse, that you should tell someone, because that's the only way to get the person that's being abused some help.
Why do you think that people don't necessarily tell, even if they kind of think that it might be happening?
If it's their family member, you maybe don't want to get your family member in trouble. A lot of your abusers are your family members. It's somebody that you know.
And I think now with the economy, a lot of family members are moving back in with grandma. They've lost their jobs and they have their challenges in life, and now grandma lives in Florida and they move in. So kind of an easy out sometimes. Now, don't get me wrong, many of those people care and are truly vested in their grandparent, but you have those that
Or their parent, right.
that Sherry probably knows quite well.
And I have found through the county, when we receive calls, especially from neighbors, folks who live in some of these 55-plus neighborhoods, they may be neighbors to an individual who they feel is either being abused or has been abused, or even if there's self-neglect going on, and they'll call our office and they'll say, I don't want to call the 800 number, I don't want to get involved, I don't want them to be mad at me, because they'll find out that I turned them in. And we try to educate the caller, because 9 times out of 10 the caller has far more information in detail with respect to the real situation going on than we do taking their call. And we let them know that to call the 800 number, you do not have to give your name. You can remain anonymous, but they are such a great source of detail and information for that potential victim that we try to encourage them to call the 800 number and to share with them what they've seen, what they've experienced. And if someone just flat out refuses to do that and they're just like, under no circumstances will I call, we will get as much information as we can. We will ask them, tell us what you've seen, what you've heard, what you know, have you been inside their home? And we will call the abuse hotline ourselves from our office.
Well, and I think it's important to say, too, that it doesn't have to be that you are positive that this abuse is happening. I mean, if you just really feel like there's some things that are maybe just not feeling right.
Right.
I mean, your job isn't necessarily to have 100% prove.
It's reasonable cause to suspect.
Right.
That's enough. And if she were to take that information from somebody that called her, she would have to give enough information to our hotline counselors, because if it does not rise to that reasonable cause to suspect, they will screen out the call and a report will not be generated. So she herself has to provide enough information to our counselors to even get the report generated.
I've had experience where a daughter would contact me and say, I cannot do this, my 6 siblings will hate me forever, would you do it for me? And I was right there with her, with my phone, and we did it together, but I had the conversation. As an advocate, there it is, supporting the entire family and making sure the right things are done.
I just think that a lot of times we are so hesitant to get involved because we're afraid that we're wrong, one. We don't want to be embarrassed. We don't want somebody to look at us funny and go, oh, you're a troublemaker or you're anything like that. But on the flip side, if something is happening, that's really when it's scary, when you didn't get involved and then you're kicking yourself because.
And one thing that everybody, I think, needs to know is the reporter information is completely confidential. So if I go into a home and, Sally Mae did give me her name in a report, even if the victim says, well, I know Sally Mae called that report in, I'm sorry, ma'am, I can either confirm or deny that that's the truth. This reporter information is confidential. There's a reason. It protects people and encourages people to call because there is anonymity. We cannot tell who the reporter is.
What are some of the repercussions if you don't report it? I'm talking about for the people who are the ones that have to report, because as a bystander, I don't have any legal repercussions other than my own guilty conscience, I guess. But but what are the legal repercussions if you don't report?
It can be a referral to the state attorney's office.
And what does that mean?
They could press criminal charges.
So what is the process of the thing? You call the hotline, you said. What else? What happens?
Their report gets called into the hotline, and I'll just speak specifically for Lake County.
And that's, 1-800-96-ABUSE, right?
That's correct.
1-800-96-ABUSE.
Very good.
And if the report is generated, it comes down into Lake County, and the supervisor will review the report and assign it to one of the investigators. The investigator then has a certain response time. They either have a 24-hour response time from when the intake is received into the unit, or they'll have a 3-hour response time. That's what we consider an immediate response. You need to get out there very quickly. What happens then is the investigator goes out and makes a face-to-face contact with the victim. That's the commencement of their case, and they have to try to make a face-to-face visit with the victim within 24 hours. Best practice is you try and make that first face-to-face as soon as the report comes in, so you can make multiple attempts to see your victim to ensure that they're safe. And then depending on what the nature of the report is, we investigate self-neglect, second-party cases, which is abuse and neglect and exploitation. We review the intake narrative with the victim, but the key thing for us that we do is we have to assess a person's capacity to consent, and that is one of the key things that our investigators do, is when we go into a home and we speak with a victim, we have to see if they're able to understand and have the ability to make their own decisions. So that for us plays a very large part and differentiates us with other organizations.
And many times, if they have capacity, they have the right to make poor choices. So we have to do the fine line, and I think that's what Sherry is getting at.
Oh, they have.
There's a fine line. They have the right to allow the grandson to live in the house, but then this is where we get counseling involved and such.
And then, so if they decide there is abuse, whether it's self-neglect, whether it is abuse by a third party, or second party, what happens then?
Well, if it's a second-party case, if we have reason to believe that there's any indicators of any abuse happening, that's a second-party case, we're obligated to notify law enforcement and state attorney's office right away. So we may do a joint investigation with them with regard to what our findings are. If it's a self-neglect case, if there's any findings, we can offer services, and the ladies here can probably speak better on the services that can be offered.
Tell us about that.
Well, when I get a referral, I go in and hopefully they're of capacity and the family's involved, positively involved, and then we can come up with a plan, depending on what the situation drives and what the financial...
That's what I was just about to say. Does it depend on the finances?
You look at the two, the care, their needs, what's appropriate for their needs, and the finances, and we have to make them match. And if they don't have the finances, we have to try and find resources out there. And I refer to Lake County Elder Affairs Council.
And we have, through our department and section, we've created a resource directory, and I will tell you that, and I'll speak primarily to the self-neglect cases because that's what we tend to get. I would say majority of the time, the families who are, as you said, living up north and their mom and dad or their mom is down here, they had no idea that this was going on. So when they find out, they're of course horrified to think, oh my gosh, what a horrible child I am for not knowing my mom was in this state, sort of thing. But we have a directory that we have created that is a service provider directory. It's specifically geared for seniors, and it lists just all different forms and types of providers that are throughout Lake County, both nonprofit and for-profit organizations that provide in-home services. Many will accept Medicare and Medicaid, many won't, and some are private pay or self-pay type programs, but they're organizations that are then able to perhaps step in and help with daily living type functions, or being able to ensure that they're getting proper transportation to the grocery store or to a doctor's appointment. So we do quite a bit of information and referral, and we share our directory with children out of state, children who live 3 houses down, but many are not even aware of the fact that there are these organizations available in Lake County, right in our own communities and towns, that are able to help and reach out to their
And
parents.
you can get that online. I actually found it there too.
It
So
is
you don't have to, have the hard copy. You can find it on the internet.
Now, what about in the situation of someone who maybe is older and is relying on living in the home with someone else who is maybe emotionally or physically abusing them, but they feel like they are trapped because they don't have the money to be out on their own. They feel like they don't have a choice. What about for someone in that situation? What would you suggest?
Well, it depends on their need. First of all, medically, where are they with their care needs? Are they just needing custodial help? Is assisted living appropriate, possibly? And if they think they don't have the money, we kind of can dig into that and find if they're a veteran, there's services, there's money available, there's diversion programs, there's long-term care insurance. Many families didn't realize Dad was smart enough to get that policy. And wow, to see their face like, wow, we didn't even realize he had this. We can dig and we can really help.
Because I can think that I'm guessing just like in any abusive relationship, with a husband and wife, or a lot of the reason why they don't get out of it, even if they have the mind to be able to know I'm getting abused, is because they feel trapped within that situation. But you're saying that there is help for that.
And it's a lot of counseling, a lot of develop a rapport, develop a trust with certain agencies and people. And many times it might just be that mailman or the neighbor or the, who listens and who gets it. And if you can get through to them, you can see a whole new person.
Tell us a little bit, are there campaigns, is there programs to really bring this to light?
Well,
Sherry.
they do have a World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. People wear purple in celebration. But just opportunities like this, especially for the Department of Children and Families, every time that we get to go out into the community, we look at it as a way to educate everyone. Because not a lot of people know that we have an adult services department. Many times I would go and knock on people's doors and they would say, but I don't have any children. Well, I'm not here for a child, I'm actually here to see you. I don't think that the community at large knows that there is an adult population that is being abused and neglected. And shows like this, maybe we'll get the word out there.
What other kind of resources, as we're wrapping up, that I want to make sure if there's a website, if somebody has questions, or maybe they think, I know you gave the hotline number, but if somebody's thinking that maybe they see abuse, is there a website that
Well, certainly
people can go
through the county, we have an information referral number where we are able to provide probably direction to almost any issue that is being raised. Our telephone number, which we're situated in Tavares, is of course area code 352, but for our Elder Affairs it's 742-6520. And that rings right to an individual's desk. If for some reason you do not get that person, she will call you back. She's amazing.
Well, and you have all these pamphlets in front of you. Is there a
do.
place that people can go to pick up information?
The county's website it has a wealth of information. The county's website is www.lakecountyfl.gov, and you simply go to the department section, pick Community Services, and on a drop-down you will see Elder Affairs, and click on that, and we just have an abundance of resources.
And if they are not a computer person, is there somewhere they can go to pick up anything?
We're actually in the Round Administration Building,
Okay.
5th floor.
Because I'm just thinking there's somebody out there going, but I don't use a computer. This is
They
annoying.
can come to Tavares
Okay.
and come to the 5th floor of the Round Admin Building, and we're located on the 5th floor in room 520. And we have, again, we have printed material galore as well.
And a lot of times it's difficult when you're 90 to come down to Tavares
Right.
and go to the 3rd or 4th, 5th floor. So call the advocates. We're out there, Tri-County Senior Outreach Services, 352-551-1260 for free. You
They
do
wanna
not have
help.
to spend a lot of money to have an advocate and someone to see your case and help you through it.
Very good. Well, thank you all for your time today, and we are out of time.
Thank you.
Thanks.